to make sure that you've got the time and the energy investment to do them, right? Like you're not, if it's an aggressive business building year, you're not trying to learn Spanish that year. You're not trying to have a ton of social obligations. You're not trying to do all these different things where you start to have all these projects and time obligations and everything just starts to gather so much weight, and then it makes your perfectionism worse because you're not able to aggressively take on these business projects because you're under stress. And whenever you're under stress, it's going to aggravate that perfectionism, because the perfectionism is you being where you are now, and then you have this standard, and then the self-abuse and the shame starts to come in. And I've seen this with a lot of top performers. Most top performers are coming from a place of self-hatred. They're coming from a high level of shame. They were raised by parents who usually had really high standards for them, or they were somehow bullied or something of that nature in high school. And so then they created an ideal version of themselves that does everything perfectly. And that's a very tough standard to live up to. And I've got more information on how to handle that and remove that from your imaginary audience. But in this scenario, when we're talking about perfectionism, that's usually what it is. It's you having an ideal version of yourself who does everything perfectly. And when you feel like you can't hit that standard, you don't even want to do the thing. And you'll wrestle with it and struggle and look at all these projects and sit there for hours trying to find a way to do it perfectly. And then you look at the time investment, it's not possible, and you're just like, close the computer, can't do it. So the solution to that is to set these targets and take those targets dead seriously and be like, I'm going to be imperfect along the way, but if I hit these targets, I'm going to be thrilled by the end of the year. Okay, I can leave the Spanish perfection alone. I can leave trying to learn cooking or whatever dumb hobby you're trying to do that you're just going to quit anyways. And I can launch all these projects. In fact, I can hire somebody to be a project manager on all these projects, knowing they're going to do it 70% as good as I will, and they're going to fuck a bunch of things up, but the projects are getting done and I'm going towards the target, right? So, in my opinion, if you're an entrepreneur, it's a very difficult situation a lot of times, because now you don't have a boss telling you what to do. You don't have to go into work and just do your thing. And so you have an unlimited abundance of options of things you should be doing. So it's very easy to beat up on yourself in terms of, I should be doing this for marketing, and this and this and this and this and this and all these different things. And you're listening to podcasts and you have these ideas and you're just thinking about all these things you quote unquote have to do and how you're not going to do them at a perfect level, and you end up not doing them, as opposed to hiring someone and just firing it off and knowing that they're going to fuck some of it up, but at least the CRM's getting done. At least the email blast is getting done. At least the calls are going out. And then you can optimize there. But you're not living for a perfect standard anymore. You are living to hit targets. Okay? And by your targets, you will get the result that you want. And then you'll look back 2 years from then and be like, man, why did I care so much about the decal on my website, right? I'm making $70K a month, you know? So the joy that you get from hitting your targets should far outweigh the pain of not doing things perfectly. And eventually, okay, and this is the best part, when you nail those financial targets, you get to put people in place to do things for you. And now your perfectionism is even further removed, because you're like not even hearing about it, right? It's just being done. And that is the key. So you need to, instead of identifying as or aiming to be the perfect man who does things perfectly across the board as your high standard, because it's going to be very hard for you to get rid of those high standards, and those high standards are going to be what leads to your success. Voids create value. So I'm not saying don't get rid of that void and lower your standards. I'm saying instead of the void being for perfectionism on all tasks and projects and things of that nature, no, the void becomes, I have this void, so I'm going to set these great targets for myself in terms of achievement, and the target becomes your boss. instead of the perfect initiatives and projects and all these things. No, those just become means to get to the target. And the benefits of hitting target, hitting your goals, will far outweigh the negatives of not doing these various projects well enough, right? Like, you go from 10K a month take home to 40K a month take home. You're not going to give a fuck at the end of the year that your email sequence wasn't perfect and you didn't do perfect follow-up and, you know, your course had some typos, whatever. You're not going to give a fuck. You're going to be like, whatever. You know, at the end of the day, a year later, you don't really care about the stuff anyways, even if it was perfect. And even if it was perfectly done, chances are you're not going to like it in 2 years' time. You know, you'll have different ideas for how it could have been done, or let's say you're doing a video, the technology's changed, whatever. But you're going to be damn happy hitting that 40K. You know, you're going to be happy at 6 feet, 210. You're going to be happy with that solid girlfriend you got. And that should be your boss as an entrepreneur, the targets. So I hope that rings true. It's been a huge benefit for me to live and die for targets, and it's helped me move beyond perfectionism, as well as outsourcing the various aspects of my business, so I'm not being triggered by it as much as I would be if I was doing it myself, knowing that things aren't going to be done perhaps at the standard that I want, but even if I was doing them, I'm not doing them at my own standard anyways. But I'm getting much more benefit out of having the actual result. And, you know, as an entrepreneur, think about your targets are the boss, right? Everyone else, you're the boss, they're executing your will, but you have a boss too, and it's your targets. And I see a lot of guys setting goals, but not taking them seriously and setting too many goals and not really waking up every day being like, what's going to get me to those goals, and sacrificing everything else that's not. So if you want to see exactly how to do that, pick up my life game course, revolutionarylifestyledesign.com/courses. So it's got a list of maybe 75 decade-long goals, your yearly goals, your projects, how to hit them across all the different, you know, aspects of life, example goals, as well as your example days that you're going to be able to live once you hit those targets, which you need to keep you motivated, right? Like, so you go from 10 to 40K, how's that going to change your life? Oh, okay, you're living in Colombia in a 5K a month penthouse, you know, spending another, let's say 10K a month to live a baller ass life, saving 25K a month, putting it into rental real estate, etc. Picturing your life with your dating prospects and, you know, the ATV rides you're going on in the mountains, etc. That's how you get really inspired for those targets, is when you can see them over a decade, and then you can start to picture your ideal day and sketch it out with all the images and videos needed about the condos you're going to live, who you're going to be dating, etc. So I'll show you how to do all that in the course, as well as really give you the rundown on the life game and, you know, learning how to understand yourself and how the world works and all these other things, you know, to prepare you for setting those targets when you're convinced that consistent happiness is the best way to live, and that those targets, those goals, are basically trophies from games that you're trying to play. And playing games within the game of life, and you learn how to see it as a game of life, is what you can do to make your adulthood like a second childhood, and to make it the most enjoyable as possible. And that living in that way is the most intelligent way to live. So if you haven't picked it up, revolutionarylifestyledesign.com/courses. I think it's probably the most important thing you can do to have your decade and your year laid out, because it is your life. And so being super strategic about building out your consistent happiness, in my opinion, is the most important thing you can do.